What's up, guys? This is DomQuichotte for fxray.com and welcome to an amazing Photoshop tutorial. Today we're gonna create a music cover based on my very own intellectual abilities. So any resemblance to what you might see in a music store or iTunes or the whole internet definitely is by accident. Definitely. Here's our source image showing my... Shit, didn't want to show that. Weird. Here's our source image showing my beautiful ex-roommate, JL. Beautiful girl, beautiful name. Let's get started. Actually, before we start, open the preset manager and download the files from our website. Navigate to gradients and replace them with the ones from our website. There is a pattern as well that will be used as a layer mask for the text later, so make sure to load it as well. Now we're all set up and ready to create a new document. I just randomly name it MDNA cover, and the size of a cover is something like 5 by 5 inches. I want to add a bleed, so let's create it 6 by 6. First of all, we want to make the bleed visible, so go to View, New Guides, and add a guide at 0.5 and 5.5 inch, and the same vertical, 0.5 and 5.5. Now we get an idea of the actual cover size. If we take a closer look at the final result, you can see these glass panels. And we decided to create 12 panels, so we have to divide our 5-inch cover by 12, which is a number not really comfortable to work with. By setting the ruler unit to pixels, our 5-inch cover now is 1500 pixels, which we can easily divide by 12. So select the Marquee tool with a fixed size of 125 pixels by 6 inch, and since we're going to use the selections quite a few times, create a new tool preset and just name it glass panels. Next we want to create a grid for the panels, and let's just simply do this by dragging our guides to the right side of our selection. And it doesn't matter if you take the vertical or the horizontal guides by pressing Alt key, which in this case is faster. Just make sure that Snap and Snap to Guides is activated. Like a virgin, touched for the very first. I kind of used to sing when I do this boring stuff, but fortunately we're done now. Make sure to save the document, and let's continue with some female support. My beautiful ex-roommate JL, definitely not a virgin, I guess. Right click on the layer and select duplicate layer. Just type in something and select MDNA cover as destination and close the file. The picture doesn't really fit into our layout yet, so let's start adjusting by flipping the picture horizontally. Press Command T for transform and link the aspect ratio. Scale it down to 42% and rotate it about 14 degrees. Then move the picture around and make sure that the eye is not between two glass panels. There still are some white spots we have to fill, so press Command J to duplicate the layer, and let's flip it back to its original position. Press Command T for transform and rotate it exactly twice the value we used earlier. Confirm and move the copied layer to the left corner so that you get a nice smooth transition. I guess nobody will care about the black stripe later, so let's just merge all the visible layers. Although JL is really beautiful, having her face twice is not what we really want, so make a rough selection with the polygon tool or whatever you're comfortable with and include the right corner. Go to Edit, Fill, and use Content Aware. Content Aware is like magic. Very powerful. Whew, gone with the wind. Still, there is a spot that needs some lovely devotion. Select the stamp tool and make sure that the edge of the blazer fits. Just roughly paint over the white background with 100% opacity. It really doesn't need to be very precise since we're going to use a lot of effects later. By converting our layer into a smart object, we easily can adjust the image afterwards. We even could replace a picture with a real virgin or a pop star or something like that, but for now let's practice on beautiful JL, especially since we're going to cut her into pieces so she will fit in our glass panels. Cruel, I know. Pick the Marquee tool and select the left bleed. I told her one day she'll regret moving out. Create a layer mask and unlink the mask from the image. You're now able to move and transform the image within the mask without changing the actual position. And that's what we're gonna do with all the glass panels. Press Command J to duplicate a layer and delete its layer mask. Pick the Marquee tool with the glass panels preset, select the first glass panel and create a layer mask, which should be unlinked as well. Repeating this another 12 times would be a pain in the ass, so create a new action, name it layer mask, and press record. Start the recording by pressing Command J to duplicate the layer, select the layer mask and move it to the next panel, which should be easy if Snap to Guides is activated. Stop recording, get a drink, and start with the one finger move magic. One finger move magic. What a word. Actually, the bleed is bigger than our glass panels, so select the mask and stretch it until it fits. Although it might look as there's transparency, if you zoom in you'll see that it's just a graphic bug, so don't worry guys. We are now ready to create the mirroring that occurs when you look through glass panels. Switch to the Move tool and make sure that both Auto Select and Show Transform controls are activated. Don't forget to switch from a layer mask to the actual image. Now we can select and transform a layer just by clicking on it, which definitely will save you a lot of time. It might take you a while to figure out which panel how to transform and how to distort, and my version isn't physically correct, I guess, and nobody actually cares, so keep on experimenting. It might take you a few trials. Since we're working non-destructive, it's really easy to just adjust each layer. One thing maybe that might be helpful, the more you move to the corner, the more distortion you should apply on that layer. Starting with our eye, which is the point of interest and has almost no distortion, to the corner where we really try to squeeze the whole layer. You can even scale the picture up, it doesn't have to be always the same size. I hate watching video tutorials where people put all this detailed, boring stuff. I'm like, I don't want to see it. I just want some action, some cool stuff. And now we're recording this, and it's super boring, I know. But it's necessary, and we're almost done. It's a wrap, eventually. Yet we need to adjust the colors, and since we're working with smart objects, just double-click on any layer to enter the original image. Create a new hue saturation adjustment layer to primary adjust the skin tones. Limit the colors to reds and increase the lightness to about 40. Continue with the yellows and increase the lightness to about 70 so the skin gets smooth and desaturated. We want to change the background color as well, so select the signs and play with hue and saturation until you achieve a nice bluish vivid background color. Maybe a little more green. Okay. Let's take the chance and adjust the colors of the eyeshadows by just playing with hue and saturation until the eyeshadow matches the background. Skin tone and background look good to me. Now I want sexy red lips. Select the pen tool with the red fill and start outlining the lips. If you're not familiar with the pen tool, you A, should learn it as soon as possible, and B, you can of course create a solid color with the layer mask and just paint over the lips, but I really like the option of changing my mask and being really precise. Once you're done with the path, change the blend mode to soft light so you can see what's going on and subtract the teeth from the lips. You don't have to be super accurate since we're going to feather the shape anyway, but as someone lately told me, sexy lips are half the battle. Or was it breasts? Never mind. Feather the mask about 2 pixels and duplicate the layer by pressing Command J. Change the blend mode to color and set the opacity to about 50 or 60%. Next, add a gradient map adjustment layer and select our first preset, which looks kind of gross. Set a blend mode to soft light and play with the opacity. Something between 50 and 60 should be fine. Invert the layer mask by pressing Command I. Select the brush tool with no hardness and a white foreground color and bring back the color by softly painting over her facial contour, especially the shadows below her lips, the nose. You can even increase the color in the eyeshadows since the gradient map matches them. If you're not working with a pen tablet, you probably have to change the opacity quite a few times to get a nice result. But either you work with a pen tablet or a mouse, make sure to blur the mask with the Gaussian blur to get a softer transition. You might need to adjust the opacity after you blurred the mask. As a last step, we want to increase the contrast. Select the brightness contrast adjustment layer and bring up the brightness to about 20 and the contrast to about 40. But make sure that there are still some details. Easiest way to compare is by switching the visibility of the brightness and contrast layer. Close the document by pressing Command W and make sure to save the smart object. It might take a while to update the information in our document, but once it's done, it looks so good. And since working with smart objects is so much fun, select all layers and convert them into a new smart object. To keep track of all our layers, okay, that's just one layer, right? Never mind. Give it an original name like original, for instance. We're gonna need a texture for our glass distortion, so create a new solid color, black as midnight, duplicate the image as MDNA cover texture, and make sure the duplicate merged layers only is selected. Although the document is black, we still have our guides. Pick the Marquee tool with a fixed size of 5 pixels by 6 inch and select the very first vertical guide. Go to the adjustment layers and create a new solid color, white as snow, snow white, and try to center the line as far as possible. As you can't divide 5 pixels by 2, there will be 2 pixels on one side and 3 pixels on the other side, and nobody actually will care. Smart as we are, we already have recorded an action we can run until our guides are recreated by white solid lines. If you set a function key for this action, this works even faster. To use this texture, we need to save it as a Photoshop file before we can close it. Get rid of the black color fill in our main document. And hey, let's continue with the cool stuff. Go to Filter, Distort, Glass. The glass filter is a powerful feature that allows you to put your selection behind glass, and you can define how the glass looks like and how it behaves. Since we created our own displacement map, go to Load Texture and select our MDNA cover texture PSD file. Since texture and image are both the same size, we should set the scaling to 100%, so the distortion is exactly where we separated the layers. Invert the texture and start playing with the parameters of distortion and smoothness. You probably will achieve the best results with a distortion between 15 and 20 and a smoothness between 10 and 15, but just play around and see what looks good to you. This looks good to me, and since we applied this filter on a smart object, we can adjust it anytime. Next, we want to colorize some of the glass panels, so pick the Marquee tool with our glass panels preset and select the glass panel you want to colorize. Easiest way to colorize a panel is by creating a gradient map, and let's take our second preset for this one. Don't change the blend mode, but try to set the opacity down to about 50%. Select the next glass panel and create another gradient map with our third preset. Don't adjust blend mode and opacity and select the next glass panel. Create another gradient map adjustment layer with our fourth preset before selecting the very last glass panel. Once again, create a new gradient map adjustment layer and select MDNA 5 as a gradient. While the right side looks pretty good, the left side is kind of boring. Let's copy the original layer by dragging it all the way up while holding the Alt key. We want to add a nice reflection, so go to Filter, Blur, Motion Blur, select an angle of 90 degrees and play with the distance so that you hardly can spot the face. Like every smart filter, you can adjust the values afterwards. Set the blend mode to screen and change the opacity to about 50 or 60%. Pick the Move tool and drag the reflection to the left side so the face fills the blue spot. Make sure that the joints are overlapping. It looks much better, but let's work on the colors. You should be trained in creating gradient maps, so why not adding another one with our sixth preset? Select the gradient as a clipping mask since we don't want to affect the whole image but just a layer below, and add a layer mask to our reflection. Select the black brush and paint within the glass panels where you think there is too much color or reflection. Don't forget to paint over the layer's edge so it blends better with the colorized panels, and make sure to get rid of any color in her face. If you press and hold the Shift key while painting, you'll make sure that you'll stay in line with your brush, but you should release the Shift button if you try to take another stroke, since Photoshop would try to connect the point where you ended with the point where you start a new stroke. For this purpose, you should set brush opacity to about 50%. It makes the reflection even more realistic. When done, motion blur the layer mask to get a smoother result, but make sure that the angle doesn't change. Okay, it does look good, but there still is something missing. Create a new empty layer and let's paint another light reflection, maybe a softbox or something. Select the brush with a white foreground color and a hardness of about 60% and paint over two glass panels and switch between taller and smaller strokes so it looks more or less like what I painted. Press Command T and stretch it almost all the way to the bottom. Confirm and motion blur our new light source with a really big distance. Press OK and double click on a layer to enter the layer style dialog. Activate outer glow and select the bluish color that is lighter than our background but still matches the color. Confirm and set the opacity to 100%. Set the size to 130 pixels and now that you can see the glow, you can match the color even better. Create a new layer and repeat the step with smaller reflections. Vary in brush size and choose different positions, but make sure to stay close to a joint. And I'm not talking about the thing some of you guys smoke at home. Press Command T for transform and stretch it all the way down. Jesus. Go to filter, blur, motion blur, and actually you can leave the settings as they are. Copy the style from our previous layer by dragging the icon on our new layer while holding Command key. Create a new empty layer and let's add the depth to the panels. Pick a black brush and paint on the bottom side of the panels. And don't touch the joint. Okay, Command T for transform and stretch it almost all the way to the top. As usual, go to filter, blur, motion blur, and leave the settings as they are. Change the blend mode to soft light and set the opacity to about 60%. Look how the glass panels start to look three-dimensional. Let's clean up the mess. Select all of our new layers and press Command G. Change the group's name to something recognizable like color and reflection, or C&R, or R&B, or something. Okay, let's continue with our final color correction and add a new black and white adjustment layer. I spontaneously decided to create a black and white cover since most of the musicians I know don't have the money to print a cover in color. Just kidding. Set the blend mode to soft line. Of course, all of my music friends are super famous. Go all the way down with the reds and all the way up with the yellows to increase the contrast between lips and skin. Gaga is like my BFF or Justin, not the young one. And play with the blue channel to modify the contrast in our softbox reflection and set the opacity down to about 75%. Select the layer mask and paint over the colorized panels since contrast and color are pretty well there. Reduce the size of your brush and start painting over the areas where there is too much contrast. Especially the shadows should be barred from this effect, and since my brush opacity is 50%, I need to repaint some areas. You can exclude the eyes and the nose as well, but leave the lips as they are. Then we need to feather the mask, so go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. Okay, and hey, let's add another gradient map. Select our last preset. Whoa, let's just quickly change the blend mode to soft light and go down with the opacity to 77%. Again, select the layer mask and paint over the colorized panels. And please release JL from this greenish, hulkish face, especially her lips. If a girl has green lips, something definitely is wrong with her. Or she's the Wicked Witch of the West, Elphaba, or Fiona, Shrek's wife. Or a woman who kissed Hulk, which is nearly impossible, I guess. Feel free to leave a comment if you have someone else in mind. And Kermit the Frog is not a woman, don't forget. Okay, back to our tutorial. Motion blur the layer mask to underline the structure of the glass panels. Press OK and select the two layers that are responsible for the color correction. By pressing Command G, you can move the selected layers into a folder, which you should name logically. Is this logical? Never mind. Let's improve our layout and get rid of the bleed. So pick the Marquee tool and select our actual cover. Still 5 by 5 inches, hopefully. Invert the selection and create a new solid color adjustment layer, which can be black or white or black. Yeah, black works fine for that. Select the text tool by pressing T and type in whatever you want. I'm gonna use the model's name with the font dyed. Press Command T for transform and scale it up. Position the font under her head and make sure that it is easy to read. As soon as you're done, create a layer mask for the text, which we want to fill with a pattern. Go to Edit, Fill, Use Pattern, and select the pattern we preloaded at the beginning. Okay, great. Someone seriously should use this as a music cover. Maybe someone famous. As a matter of form, we should put our two layers in a group, which we name Layout. Okay, pressing Command G is definitely faster. As a last step, let's add a little bit more dynamic. Select our non-layout layers and convert them into a smart object. Might take a second. Press Command T for transform and rotate it about 2 degrees. That's it. Guys, thanks for watching. This is DomQuichotte for fxray.com. Take care.